Hey, it's your pal Sean from the Commander's Brew. You know us, we brew crazy decks on the cheap, and we have a bunch of laughs while we do it. Well, this week, we've got the brand new spoiled Strixhaven Commander, Extus Oriq Overlord. He's a Mardu MDFC commander with a spell on the back, and we're doing some great shenanigans with him. Check it out. Yes, so this is the recently spoiled from Strixhaven, Extus Oriq Overlord. This might be the first time you're hearing about this. We haven't done our set review yet. We're getting right into it because they're out. Let's brew. So we've got an MDFC in the command zone. So the front side is Extus Oriq Overlord. It's a Mardu color identity, but the front is Orzhov. 1 white, black, black. 4 mana. For a double strike 2/4 with Magecraft. Magecraft is a new ability that triggers whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell and something happens. And in Extus's case, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, return target non-legendary creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So you're casting spells or copying spells, bringing creatures back from the graveyard to the hand. Now on the back, also in the command zone, is Awaken the Blood Avatar. This is a sorcery. It's 6 black red, Rakdos on the back, but so that makes the whole identity Mardu. So here's what it does. Sorcery. As an additional cost to cast the spell, you may sacrifice any number of creatures. This spell costs 2 colorless less to cast for each creature sacrificed this way. In addition, each opponent sacrifices a creature and you create a 3/6 black and red avatar creature token with haste, and whenever this creature attacks, it deals 3 damage to each opponent. So when you cast the back of this spell, you might only pay black-red for it if you sack a few creatures. Your opponents will each sack a creature and you will get to attack somebody. Everybody takes 3, and you're attacking one other opponent with a 3/6. You can choose to cast the front or the back from the command zone, and all the regular stuff applies. If it ever changes zones, right? You get to put it back in the command zone, and it costs 2 more every time, regardless of whether you've cast the front or the back. You can cast the front 3 times, and then the back would have would be the 4th cast. So you'd have to add 8 mana to it. But the beauty of the back is if you sack, you can keep sacking more creatures. And if you can sack enough creatures, you only have to pay red-black to get it, which is amazing. And the synergy of these two sides is really interesting because the front, as we cast spells, we're getting creatures back from the graveyard, and the back sacrifices those creatures to get cast for cheap. So we can kind of keep that back and forth going quite nicely. So that's Extus. Let's get to the deck, shall we? The theme is cheap 2-drops. 2 CMC creatures is the main theme of the deck, and we especially want to favor ones that bring in 2 bodies for 1 card. Like Lazotep Reaver, 1 and a black, Zombie Beast 1/2. When it enters the battlefield, amass 1, so we get a little 1/1 zombie alongside of it. Or quite simply, Goblin Instigator, 1 and a red, Goblin Rogue is a 1/1, and when it enters, you make a 1/1 Goblin token. All of that's 4 creatures for 4 mana that would bring the backside of Extus down to, well, I've got a creature left over. It's black-red to cast him, or with tax. That covers 1 instance of tax as well. Those 2 cards alone. We've got other ways of getting extra bodies out of cards. Andy, why don't you take the next couple?
Yeah. Okay, we have first up Aether Chaser, 1 and a red for a Human Artificer, 2/1 with first strike. Says when Aether Chaser enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy, and whenever Aether Chaser attacks, you may pay 2 energy, and if you do, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token.
So you only get the extra body on attack, and unless you have more energy, you're not going to get more than 1. But we're not expecting these creatures to stick around for a few rounds of the table. So getting that 1 servo is just fine for Aether Chaser.
Yeah, exactly. Next up, we have Clarion Spirit. It's a 1 and a white for a creature spirit. It's a 2/2. It says whenever you cast your second spell each turn, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with Flying. Not bad, not bad.
That's a nice way to get a lot of extra bodies out of one card. Again, you're not going to get it instantly, but since most of our deck is 2 CMC, it's very easy to trigger that the second time. And again, that's in the name of just filling up the board with a lot of cheap creatures. We can either cast the front side of Extus to get these cards back from the graveyard to our hand to cast again, or we can use them as sack fodder to cast the back for black-red and still have some mana left over, maybe. Right. So, I mean, that's the general gist of it. We've got a bunch more 2-mana cards, like, little dorks that draw cards upon entry, or destroy enchantments upon entry, or destroy artifacts upon entry. So we've got most of our utility and vegetables lumped into those 2 CMC creatures. So I think you got an idea of where this is going. So I think it's time to get into those innate moves.
Working on a
neat moves. We're just going to take a second to handle a little bit of business. And the main point is, thanks for watching. If you want to see more of our comedic takes and offbeat decks, consider subscribing to our channel and hitting that bell to make sure you don't miss anything. And if you're loving our stuff and want to support further, the best way is to head over to patreon.com/commandersbrew. Find out how our generous patrons keep our show growing and how you can get in on the brewing action too through our Discord. Or, if you'd rather, just hang out and play some games with like-minded Commander players. Now, let's get back to those innate moves. So you'll notice the Magecraft is how we trigger getting creatures back from the graveyard to our hand. So I've decided to focus most of the instants and sorceries on draw with discard. Andy, lead us through this next section.
Okay, so first here is a real classic. It's Thrill of Possibility. 1 red for an instant with, as an additional cost to cast the spell, discard a card and draw 2 cards. So yeah, that's a pretty good one. Just dump a card and get 2 more. Valakut Awakening is also here, 2 red for an instant. Put any number of cards from your hand on the bottom of your library, then draw that many cards plus 1. And then on the other side, it's just Valakut Stoneforge, which is a land that enters the battlefield tapped. Taps for red. And of course, the really cool thing about these cards is that with Extus's ability, the Magecraft ability, like you said, we're going to be ditching a card for these, or for like Thrill of Possibility specifically. And then I think if the timing is right, you're going to be able to get that card back.
Well, the neat thing about Thrill of Possibility with the timing of is part of the cost to cast it, part of the cost to put on the stack is to discard that card. So if we discard a 2-drop, we will draw 2 cards, Magecraft goes on the stack, and we can get back the very 2-drop we discarded to Thrill of Possibility. So all of Thrill of Possibility, all of those ilk, like Valakut Awakening works differently because the discard is part of the effect, so you can't get the ones you discard back with that very trigger. But there's a ton of Thrill of Possibility in sorcery that are the same but different, different names. So like we can really sneak extra cards that way.
Yeah, I was watching something the other day where it was like the new one of these. I don't know the name of it, but it's from Strixhaven. The discarding is part of the resolution. Yeah, as of part of the cost, or rather, as opposed to part of the cost. So it's better for like not getting blown out by counter spells.
Okay.
But in this case, Thrill of Possibility is better.
Yes, we do. Yeah, that's something. And like I said, we love a full graveyard because Extus can just keep getting things back. So we don't care. Like we don't mind discarding lands. And since a ton of the deck is 2-drops, of course we're going to put in Lurrus of the Dream Den. We can't companion it because the companions look at the commander as well. The commander is not 2 CMC. So Lurrus is a 1 and 2 hybrid Orzhov, 3 CMC, or mana value now that we're calling it. Legendary Cat Nightmare, 3/2 with lifelink, and during each of your turns you may cast 1 permanent spell with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard. That's great. One of the creatures we've discarded, one of the creatures that has died, one of the creatures that was sacrificed to the backside of Extus. Those are some of the myriad of things Lurrus can get back. And that kind of leads us to like the coolest part of the deck. This next batch of cards, Andy, is kind of what we're building towards entirely.
Right on. So the first one of these is a card that I always looked to try and get some use out of, but can never seem to really make it work. But Immortal Servitude, it's X and then 3 Orzhov Hybrid for a sorcery that says return each creature card with converted mana cost X from your graveyard to the battlefield. Pretty sweet. Looks like a good one. Especially when we all have 2 drops. So this is going to cost like 5 and we'll just get everything back from our graveyard.
Yeah, so we'll probably make a couple tokens, maybe destroy an enchantment, draw a couple cards, maybe rummage a couple of times, which means putting more 2 drops in the graveyard for the future. Who knows?
Yeah, pretty incredible stuff. And then next we have Return to the Ranks, X, white, for a sorcery with Convoke. And if you're not familiar with Convoke, it's just that the creatures you control can tap for mana towards it, including colored mana of whatever the creature is. And you can return X target creature cards with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So really this one's like better than Immortal Servitude because, I mean, really just because of the Convoke alone makes it better. And it's just 1 less as well.
Yeah.
And then after that, we have Rally the Ancestors, which is X, white, for an instant. It says return each creature card with converted mana cost X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Exile those creatures at the beginning of your next upkeep. Exile Rally the Ancestors. I imagine we'll get some use out of these guys before we have to exile them.
Just so happens we've got a sack outlet in the command zone. That's on right. The back. So like we don't have to worry about exiling things unless we just can't cast the backside of our commander for enough. Like we just can't do it because there's just not enough there's not enough to spend.
Yeah, and of course obviously we get some really good ETB abilities off of a bunch of these. Like even if we just get all the tokens from like the ETB abilities like Lazotep Reaver and stuff like that, like that's probably great alone, right?
Yeah, and I haven't a couple of the variety of these creatures, they bring their token upon death. Like it's a death trigger that they give their token, like in a spirit, which is also great because then it's just still around for another round of sacrificing if we wanted. Yeah. So like this is the beauty of like what I want to point out is that since the back side of the commander is a sorcery, let's say I rally the ancestors or one of these other spells and I put like 10 creatures onto the battlefield because of effects and things, and a couple of them will turn into spirits when they die. I can sacrifice 3 of them for my first cast of the backside of my commander. So I'm going to put a 3/6 hasty avatar on the battlefield and my opponents will sack a creature. But now that card goes back to the command zone. If I have 4 more creatures still, I'm going to sack those and cast that sorcery again for 2 more mana, but it's just discounted by an additional sacrifice. So I'm going to put a second 3/6 avatar. My opponents will sacrifice a second creature. And if I've got more creatures on the battlefield, I can keep that up. I can sack as much as I need to cast my sorcery as many times as I can afford for creatures and just get like 3 or 4 of those avatars on the battlefield, attack, trigger, everyone loses 12 and had to sack 4 creatures. Like that's a real possibility with this commander, which
yeah, so I just wanted to check. So the each opponent sacrifices a creature, and then you create a 3/6 black and red avatar creature token.
No,
that's not connected in any way.
If you ignore,
So like if they don't have creatures to sacrifice, you still get the tokens.
Yeah. So my opponent, the spell's effect includes my opponent sacking a creature, and I get a cool hasty avatar that does damage when it attacks. And I can cast it for cheaper by sacking my own creatures.
Right. Yeah. So I just want to make sure. Yeah.
So like now I want to talk about we got real deep on Fury Storm in the Discord when we were talking about it, and because I had never Nosrak 2, one of our Discord members, very knowledgeable in the rules stuff. Nosrak 2 will be like, hey, I got a deck that uses this weird rules interaction. I think we can use it here, and I'm like, do tell. So Fury Storm. 2 red for an instant. when you cast the spell, copy it for each time you've cast your commander from the commands on this game. You may choose new targets for the copies. Copy target instance or sorcery spell, you may choose new targets for the copy. So I've painted a picture where we potentially cast our commander as the sorcery side a bunch of times, but that counts as casting our commander from the command zone. So I could potentially, maybe put a lightning bolt on the stack and Fury Storm it 6 or 7 times. That's possible. That's a cool, neat move to be sure. But here's where Fury Storm really opens up. Because Magecraft, as Extus's front side refers to, it triggers when you cast or copy a spell. A lot of times in the past, things say like, well, whenever you cast a spell, XYZ, but copies are not cast. Copies are copies. They don't give cast triggers. So here's what I never realized about Fury Storm. Let's say we're in a game and it doesn't have to be you, but it could be me, but let's say you, my opponent, casts an instant or sorcery on my turn. I can cast Fury Storm, and as long as I've cast my commander at least once, I'm going to get 2 copies of it or more. So the original copy targets your dumb spell. And the copy of Fury Storm, which that trigger resolves, and now I have to put copies on the stack. I'm going to put those copies pointed at my Fury Storm. So then they go off, and the new Fury Storms will copy that original Fury Storm. I'm not even copying your spell anymore. I just keep putting on copies of my own Fury Storm onto the stack that copy themselves, that copy themselves, that copy themselves. A spell can't target itself, but it can target the one below it. So it's just infinity Fury Storms. And it stops when I decide to make the last one copy your original spell and not more Fury Storms. So I can trigger Magecraft a bajillion times. I can pick, I would like to trigger Magecraft 100 million times, please. And I must highlight a new creature from Strixhaven. It's an uncommon, so it's not going to be super expensive. It's Storm-Kiln Artist, 3 in a red for a dwarf shaman. It's 2/2, and he gets +1/+0 for each artifact you control. But he also has Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, create a treasure token. That's infinite mana with infinite Fury Storm loops. So as long as I have Storm-Kiln Artist out, I can copy Fury Storm 100 million times, get 100 million treasure tokens, and cast the sorcery side of my commander without sacking creatures, because I don't need to, as many times as I need to kill the table. So that's the win right there. The win is in the command zone. And with Storm-Kiln Artist and any copying or copy the thing, there's that Foretell card from Kaldheim that lets you copy the next spell, and you can just loop those over and over and over. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fury Storm, this person, and the commander, that's the win. That's the game right there. If you can get that out, you've won.
I'm just looking up Fury Storm and how it's... Yeah, it hasn't really... It's not like it has gone up in price or anything, because I'm just I'm wondering, I'm like, this seems incredibly good with with anything that's doing Magecraft.
Yeah,
this card is already about $5 or something. Fury Storm, that is. But I kind of think that this is Magecraft makes Fury Storm so much better. Because you can do this for any Magecraft effect. Any Magecraft effect, you can get infinite triggers. The new Professor Onyx, the new Liliana, I think her Magecraft is opponents losing life and you gaining life. So that's an infinite win too. We could run her in this deck because we're Mardu. Right.
I just left her out for budget. I think she's pre-selling for $30 to $40.
Yeah, it makes sense. Wow. Okay. It feels like you've come across something that should affect the price of Fury Storm.
It could. Fury Storm's not the only, because Fury Storm copies itself, so it's a 1-card engine, but it's not hard. There's lots of other fork or copy effects you could jam in here, that you could do this on a budget as well.
Like you can, like there are other things that copy like 2 spells basically.
I don't know if there's another single card that does it, but all you have to do is like just get 2 fork spells, and like the first one forks the second one, which forks the first one, and just kind of like rebound them back and forth that way.
Okay, so all right. Okay, so it's not necessarily just needed to be this one card. That makes sense.
Yeah,
I mean, that
it's harder to do without it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, now we've got all the treasures in the world.
Yeah, and so that's we could just win that way. And I'm not going to go into them, but there's a lot of ways to get infinite mana in a game of Magic.
Yes,
so
there are.
So like if you want to jam as many of those as you feel like in this Mardu build, like we're sacking creatures, we're recurring creatures. If you can afford a Ashnod's Altar, like that's another great way to get extra value to like do things.
The Phyrexian
Altar to get
if you got even a little more money to spend, sure. Because you need to get that red black. So it's not, it's easier to make colorless mana, that's for sure.
True.
Or like a one color or something, right?
Yeah. Oh, and then another. I think I left him out of the show notes here, but we're certainly going to run Combat Celebrant, that exert creature that gives you a second combat step. Because if there's ever a turn where we can be like, oh look, I can create 2 or 3 avatars because of sacking things, and then Combat Celebrant lets me attack with them a couple of times, then I'm doing like 9 times 2 plus whatever hits to my opponents. That's significant damage, and it's a little bit out of nowhere. Put a little bit of haste enabling in the deck, maybe have an anger in the graveyard, and you're rolling.
Yeah, it seems like this is definitely the type of deck that can attack from a couple different angles. Like, even if you wanted to, if you had more of like that classic aristocrat style of sacrificing things, that could be a minor theme. I mean, it kind of is anyway, just the way the deck works,
Yeah.
of itself. So
yeah, and like we'll talk about it in the Lost Cards segment, but there's a few ways to go with it, even among 2-drops, right? Like, I mean, I didn't go heavy on the aristocrat ones only. This deck list I put together, I try to have a lot of variety so they can kind of handle most situations, but you could definitely go hard in the aristocrat angle. I mean, if you've got a Dockside Extortionist, that's a 2-mana creature that brings a lot of treasure with them. So go ahead.
Yes, that's right. Yes, that card these days is kill on sight. I think that.
Well, it's too late. It's too late. Like he's already given you like he's already netted you mana.
He's already got you there. Yeah.
And like this deck doesn't mind if you kill it. You have to exile it.
Yeah, that's true. This is a powerful new commander. This is a great build. This is really cool.
Yeah. So I want to take a second and thank the Discord helpers, right? We really went deep on this one. Lots of stuff. So thank you to Pips Don't Lie, Beppo, Demir Buffalo, Chiefy, Brave Sir Robin, Dylan PH, Micah, Eternity's Crafter, Gee Pizza, Jason Belk, Groove Chicken, Loki Dragon, Nosrak 2, Knackle Booper, Lol What, T-Coats, Papadio, Mattisman. If I forgot you, I'm sorry. I'll get you next time.
As always.
Yeah.
Next time is your time. Forgotten.
Yeah.
Forgotten person.
Forgotten people.
the lost person.
Yeah.
Well, that's we've done the big thank yous there. It looks like that's probably time for the budget report. So tell us what we're working with here. Where does this deck come into? It's combo decks can always be a little tricky because there's always some sought after card that might, could break the budget here. So how are we looking?
It's true. TCG player mid comes in at 154 and the low is 75.
Not bad.
Genuinely a few surprises. I did not include it in the deck, but I was like, I'll just, it might be fun. Oh, Torment to Hailfire might be fun in this deck because we can generate a good amount of mana sometimes. That card's over $20 now, so I was shocked that got that high. But that card is not in the deck. But a surprisingly expensive card. It's good, but I was surprised it was this much. Is Selfless Spirit.
Right.
It's the 1 and a white flying 2/1 Spirit Cleric. You sack it, creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. That's $10+.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a very useful creature, and having this effect. Like we've always been big fans of putting this type of effect on, your root-borne defenses and your stuff like that, to protect from board wipes they can't see it coming. There is something to be said for having it out on the creature that's right on the battlefield to just prevents them from even wanting to cast it in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, good card for sure. Another one that's up there. It's still getting played despite the change to the rule here, and that's Lurrus, the Dream Dead, as we mentioned. That's the companion there. Yeah, there's still a lot of decks in. I think there's still standard decks that are running this. I think the
Totally
cycling deck is still running this, and one of the other ones. So yeah, having this up and around $10 still is kind of surprising to me too, actually.
Yeah, I don't think this deck needs the recursion. It's cute and it's just very useful, but Extus can handle it on their own as well.
Yeah, how often, what's the turn do you think you're more likely to cast the sorcery than Extus himself? Because how often is Extus on the battlefield?
That's the thing. In my limited testing, it's hard to. I didn't get a lot of chance to test because this commander came out very recently before recording. But
it's not released yet.
right. It's not even out yet. I think I don't think you cast the front much. I think we're relying on our sorceries to get our graveyard back into play, and we're hoping to cast the back over and over. I think the front is. Because by that point, if you've looped through a few times, you've cast the sorcery side a few times, the front's too expensive, and that's not an efficient way to get your creatures back.
Interesting. Wild. So you kind of have this big sorcery in your command zone only, really.
Kind of. I think the front side of Extus is for when your engine gets disrupted before you can really get rolling. If you're building up your board, you're starting to go, but then your opponents deal with it, maybe a couple of board wipes, and you've got a chunk of creatures in the graveyard and you haven't cast your commander yet, I might start with Extus, start getting a bunch back while I'm casting Tormenting Voice effects, filling up my hand, filling up the yard more, putting them back on the battlefield. Yeah, it just depends on how it plays out.
Yeah, so it sounds like Lurrus is good in that scenario then, but you have to decide
it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. It's
but for budget, if you just want save yourself.
We've got a lot of other ways to do it, so yeah, it might be fine to save the 10.
And I included Tempt with Vengeance, which is the red X spell, because we have ways of making infinite mana. I always think that's a fun thing to have a 1 or 2 X spells in there. It's the tempting spell where you put X 1/1 red elementals with haste, and each opponent has the option of also putting that many 1/1 elementals with haste. And if they do, you put another batch of X elementals. So it's your opponents can't afford to give you more elementals because you'll just sack them for the rear side of Extus anyway, and just do. I guess the sack won't matter, but you'll get to the point where you could just win with that. So it's a really tough position. It's a fun card. I like watching my opponents squirm with it, but we can save the $9.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a while, actually. It's been a while since we've included this one in a brew, but
yeah,
nice to see it come back.
Yeah, I went over Dockside Extortionist. That would be awesome. Obvious 2-drops. You got a Dark Confidant? Throw that in here. That's a great 2-drop.
Right, yeah. That's a good one. Yeah. Dockside Extortionist, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is, keep an eye peeled, though, for these commander decks. If you are in the market for a Dockside Extortionist and you feel like getting a little more than you would from a singles, I've seen this commander deck at Walmart selling for, basically the price of a Dockside Extortionist. I am not in the market for one, and I'm not in the market for the other 99 cards that came in that deck because I already have them. So I didn't pick it up. But, just heads up, these decks are still out there in the wild a little bit. So, if you're in the market, you can probably find one for cheaper than an actual Dockside Extortionist, I would imagine, pretty soon.
Yeah.
Anyways, wow. Oof. It's a good deck.
It's fun. Yeah. I can't wait till the rest of Strixhaven is spoiled. There might be a couple more juicy pieces for it.
This one feels like it really gets some work done. It's got a lot to do leading up to it. And then once you get there, I mean, you do just win. If you get really, and the great thing about it is you really only need those 2 cards because your other card is your commander.
Yeah,
pretty wild.
It's true.
I mean, hey, this is a CDH deck. Hey, who knows? Not us. That's for sure.
Right.
Very good. Well, yeah, that's it. Great stuff this week, Sean. Loving this deck here.
Thank you. Thanks everyone in Discord. Leave us a comment if you want to what's your favorite 2-drop creature?
There you go. What's anything that can come down and ETB make a bunch of tokens seems good. I'm sure there's a lot of good candidates out there. Well, that'll be it. Yeah, we'll check you all back here again next week for brand new deck tech, and also keep an eye out Thursdays on YouTube for Lost Cards. See you then. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. If you love what we're doing, consider supporting the show by going to patreon.com/commandersbrew.
And if you want to get any of the cards from our deck list, go to our TCG Player affiliate link below.
That helps us out too, and for a free way to help us out, consider sharing the show with some friends. Like and subscribe, add a comment or two.
See you later.
Bye.